The Dominion had conquered 17 star systems in just 10 years. Their warriors were massive creatures, standing 8 feet tall with hard shells covering their bodies like natural armor. They had 4 arms, sharp claws, and eyes that could see in complete darkness. In all their history of war and conquest, they had never lost a single battle. Admiral was the most feared commander in the fleet. She had led the destruction of 3 civilizations and had earned her rank through blood and victory. When her scouts reported a new species called humans at the edge of known space, she felt only mild curiosity. The reports said humans were soft creatures. They had no claws, no shells, no natural weapons. They were small, barely 6 feet tall, and they needed machines to survive in space. Their civilization was young, only 200 years into space travel. Their ships were slow and their weapons were primitive. Smiled when she read the reports. This would be an easy conquest. She sent 3 cruisers to the human mining colony called New. It was a small settlement on a rocky moon, home to about 5,000 humans who dug minerals from the ground. The cruisers carried 600 warriors, more than enough to crush any resistance. The attack began at dawn, local time. Sergeant Park was eating breakfast when the alarm started screaming. He was 32 years old, a career soldier who had served in the United Nations Defense Force for 12 years. He had fought in 2 border conflicts and had trained soldiers on 4 different worlds, but he had never seen an alien before. He grabbed his rifle and ran outside. The sky was on fire. 3 massive ships hung in the air above the colony, each one bigger than anything had ever seen. They were black and angular, covered in weapons that glowed with purple light. As he watched, beams of energy shot down from the ships and destroyed the colony's defense towers in seconds. "All soldiers to defensive positions," shouted into his radio. "This is not a drill, we are under attack." He had 42 soldiers under his command. Regular infantry, armed with standard rifles and light armor. Against 600 alien warriors with superior technology, they should have had no chance. But was not thinking about chances. He was thinking about the 5,000 civilians who were counting on him to protect them. The landing ships came down in the central plaza. The doors opened and the alien warriors poured out, roaring battle cries in their strange language. They expected the humans to run. They expected fear and panic and easy kills. Instead, they found Sergeant Park standing in their path, with a rifle in his hands and fire in his eyes. "Open fire," he screamed. The first volley of human bullets surprised them. They had expected primitive weapons, easy to ignore, but the humans had developed armor-piercing rounds that could crack their shells. The first wave of warriors fell, purple blood spraying across the plaza. The commander, a veteran named, roared in anger, "Kill them all, leave none alive." The battle became chaos. They had numbers and strength, but the humans had something else. They had desperation and fury and an absolute refusal to give up. Led his soldiers through the streets of the colony, using every building as cover, every alley as an ambush point. When they ran out of bullets, they used grenades. When they ran out of grenades, they used knives. When they ran out of knives, they used their bare hands. Private Lee was 19 years old, fresh out of training. She watched a warrior kill 3 of her friends with a single sweep of its claws. Something broke inside her, but it was not her courage. It was her fear. She screamed and charged at the warrior, jamming her rifle into the gap between its armor plates and pulling the trigger until the gun clicked empty. The warrior fell and picked up its fallen weapon and kept fighting. Corporal was a quiet man who had joined the military to pay for his sister's education. When a grenade destroyed his squad's position, he crawled through the rubble with both legs broken, dragging a wounded comrade to safety. Then he picked up a machine gun and held a corridor alone for 40 minutes until reinforcements arrived. They had never seen anything like this. Their previous conquests had been simple. Other species surrendered when they saw the size of the forces. They begged for mercy. They gave up. The humans did none of these things. As the hours passed, the commanders began to feel something unfamiliar. It took them a while to recognize it, because they had not felt it in generations. It was fear. Had lost half his soldiers by the 6th hour. His armor was cracked, his rifle was damaged, and he had a deep cut across his face that would not stop bleeding. But he was still fighting. He found himself face to face with Commander in the ruins of the colony's main building. That was massive, towering over like a mountain of muscle and shell. He had 4 arms, each one ending in claws that could cut through steel. "Surrender, little creature," growled. "You cannot win. Your people will die. Accept your fate." Looked up at the alien. He was exhausted. He was wounded. He knew that he was probably going to die in the next few seconds. He smiled. "You want me to surrender," he said. "Let me tell you something about humans. We do not know how to surrender. We do not know how to give up. You can kill me, but there are billions more like me, and every single one of them will fight you until their last breath." He raised his broken rifle. "So come on then, let us see who dies first." The fight was brutal and short, was stronger, faster, and better armed, but fought with something that they did not understand. He fought with his soul. When reinforcements finally arrived, they found lying in a pool of blood, barely alive. Commander lay dead beside him, his combat knife buried in his throat. The battle for Nu lasted 19 hours. By the end, 2 of the 3 cruisers were burning wreckage in the atmosphere. The third limped away with barely 200 survivors out of the original 600. The humans had lost 31 soldiers and 200 civilians. It was a terrible price, but they had won. Admiral received the news in silence. She watched the battle recordings again and again, unable to believe what she was seeing. These soft, small creatures had defeated her warriors through sheer determination and fury. "How is this possible?" she whispered. Her advisor, a scientist named, studied the data carefully. "These humans are unusual, Admiral. They do not fight like other species. They do not calculate odds or measure risks. When they are cornered, they become more dangerous, not less. It is as if they have no survival instinct." "That is foolish," said. "All creatures want to survive." "Yes," agreed. "But most creatures will surrender to survive. Humans appear to prefer death over surrender. They would rather die fighting than live as slaves." Sat in her command chair for a long time, thinking. Finally, she made her decision. "We will send the full fleet," she said. 12 battle cruisers, 50,000 warriors. We will crush them with overwhelming force. They cannot fight what they cannot see coming." As she gave the orders, a transmission arrived from human space. It was a broadcast from something called the United Defense Council. "To the Dominion," the human speaker said. His voice was calm, almost pleasant. "You have seen what our regular soldiers can do. We are giving you one chance to withdraw, because if you continue this war, we will be forced to deploy our special operations units." Laughed out loud. "They think to frighten us with words. They think their special soldiers will be any different." She deleted the transmission without a second thought. It was the biggest mistake of her life. In a hospital bed on Nu, Sergeant Park opened his eyes. The doctors said he would need months to recover from his wounds. They said he was lucky to be alive. Did not feel lucky, he felt angry. "How many did we lose?" he asked. 31 soldiers, the nurse told him. 200 civilians, but Sergeant, you saved the colony. You are a hero. Closed his eyes, 31 soldiers, his friends. He remembered every single one of their faces. "It is not enough," he said quietly. "They will come back with more, and we need to be ready." Far away, in the depths of human space, men and women in black uniforms received new orders. They were the special forces, the elite of the elite, trained for years in the most demanding programs humanity had ever created. They had been waiting for this moment. The war was just beginning. Station was the largest military base humanity had ever built in space. It floated in orbit around a gas giant, a massive structure of metal and glass that housed 30,000 people. There were soldiers, scientists, engineers, and their families. It was a symbol of human power and ambition. Admiral chose it as her next target for exactly that reason. She brought 12 battlecruisers and 50,000 warriors. The attack came without warning, overwhelming the station's defenses in minutes. Human ships tried to fight back, but they were outmatched and outnumbered. Within 6 hours, station fell. Walked through the conquered halls with satisfaction. Human prisoners knelt in long lines, their hands bound behind their backs. Warriors stood guard at every corner. The battle was over. Or so she thought. Commander Sara watched the admiral from inside a ventilation shaft, barely 20 feet away. She was 38 years old, a veteran of the 707th Special Mission Group. Her was Ghost, and she had earned it through 15 years of operations that officially never happened. Sara was small for a soldier, barely 5 feet 4 inches tall, but size meant nothing in her line of work. She had killed enemies 3 times her size without making a sound. She had infiltrated bases that were supposed to be impossible to enter. She had completed missions that other soldiers said could not be done. When station fell, most of the military personnel surrendered or died fighting. But Sara and 11 other special operators had different orders. They were to stay hidden, stay alive, and make the enemy's life a nightmare. She watched walk past her hiding spot, close enough to touch. It would be easy to kill her right now. One shot and the fleet would lose its leader. But Sara was patient. She knew that killing now would just create a martyr, that would send another admiral and another until they conquered everything. No, she needed to do something worse than kill the admiral. She needed to break her spirit. That night, Sara and her team began their work. Private First Class O was the youngest member of the team, only 24 years old. He was a communications expert who could hack any system and listen to any signal. He spent the first night mapping the patrol routes and communication frequencies. "They are organized," he reported to Sara, "but they are also confident. They do not expect trouble. They think the battle is over." Sara smiled in the darkness. "Good. Confident enemies make mistakes." Sergeant Minu was the team's demolitions expert. He was a quiet man with steady hands and a mind that could calculate explosive yields down to the gram. He spent the night planting small charges in strategic locations throughout the station. "Nothing big," he explained. "Just enough to make noise, enough to make them nervous." Master Sergeant was the team's sniper. She had eyes like a hawk and patience like a stone. She found a hiding spot overlooking the main hangar bay and settled in to wait. At exactly 300 hours, when the guards were tired and bored, the operation began. The first explosion was small, just a pop in a supply closet on Deck 7. 3 warriors went to investigate. They never came back. The second explosion was in an engine room on Deck 12. When the investigation team arrived, they found their missing comrades hanging from the ceiling, their throats cut clean. By morning, 53 soldiers had vanished without a trace. Admiral was furious. "How is this possible?" she demanded. "We have 30,000 warriors on the station. How can anyone hide from us?" Her security chief had no answers. The humans had left no evidence, no trails, nothing. It was as if ghosts were killing her soldiers. Sara listened to the admiral's rage through a hidden microphone and felt satisfied. This was just the beginning. Over the next week, the deaths continued. Officers were found dead in their quarters with no signs of struggle. Patrols disappeared into maintenance tunnels and never returned. Food supplies were poisoned. Water systems were contaminated with chemicals that made the violently ill. The fear began to spread. Lieutenant O hacked into the communication system and started sending false orders. Patrols were sent to wrong locations. Supply shipments went to empty rooms. Officers received contradictory commands that left them confused and angry. "They are starting to fight each other," reported with a grin. "They do not know who to trust anymore." Sergeant Menu set up a network of booby traps throughout the station, doors that exploded when opened, floors that collapsed under weight, walls that released poison gas when touched. They learned to fear every step they took. Master Sergeant took her sniper rifle and began a systematic campaign of terror. She killed officers during meals, during meetings, during moments of supposed safety. She never missed, and she was never seen. They started calling her the Death Eye. But the psychological warfare was Sora's specialty. She left messages written in blood on the walls of their barracks. She arranged dead bodies in poses that had religious meaning and culture. She played recordings of screaming in the middle of the night, recordings that came from everywhere and nowhere. The warriors, who had never known fear, began to crack. Commander's replacement, a young officer named, came to Admiral with a request. "Admiral, the warriors are refusing to patrol alone. They say there are demons on this station, invisible enemies that cannot be killed." Slammed her fist on her desk. "They are not demons, they are humans, flesh and blood creatures that can be found and destroyed." "Then find them," shouted back, forgetting his place. "We have searched every corner of this station. We have used every sensor, every scanner, every tool we have, and still they kill us. 53 warriors the first night, 127 since then. How many more must die?" Stared at her young officer. She had never seen such fear in a face before. "Organize a systematic search," she ordered. "Deck by deck, room by room. Tear this station apart if you have to. Find these humans and bring them to me." The search took 3 days. Thousands of warriors moved through the station in tight formations, checking every space large enough to hide a human. They found nothing. Because Sora and her team were not hiding in spaces. They were hiding in the infrastructure itself. Inside walls, above ceilings, below floors, in the gaps and cracks that they never thought to check. On the 10th day, Admiral made a decision. "We are leaving," she announced. "This station is cursed. We will evacuate all personnel and destroy it from orbit." Her officers stared at her in shock. They had never retreated from a conquered position. Never. "Admiral," one of them said carefully, "if we leave, it will be seen as weakness. The other species we have conquered will hear about this. They might rebel." Looked at him with hollow eyes. She had not slept properly in days. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the faces of her dead warriors. "Then let them rebel," she said quietly. "I will not lose another soldier to these ghosts." As the evacuation began, Sora watched from her hiding place. Her team had not lost a single member. 12 operators against 50,000 warriors, and they had won. But she was not done yet. She waited until the last transport was preparing to leave. Then she activated her final surprise. Every screen on every ship in the fleet suddenly displayed the same message. It appeared in script, so there would be no misunderstanding. "You killed our friends. Now we take everything from you. This is just the beginning. 707th SMG." Below the message was a list. Names. Hundreds of names. Every officer who had participated in the attack on station. "These are your dead walking," the message continued. "Every name on this list will die by human hands. Not today, not tomorrow, but soon. And when your time comes, you will see us, just for a moment at the end. And you will know that the ghosts have found you." Admiral read the message with trembling hands. She recognized some of the names. Friends, colleagues, warriors she had served with for decades. "What are these special forces?" she whispered. Her intelligence officer pulled up what little information they had. "They are not simply soldiers, Admiral. They are selected from the most capable warriors humanity produces. Then they are trained for years, sometimes decades. They learn to fight in ways we do not understand. They can survive conditions that would kill normal soldiers. Each one is worth 100 regular troops, perhaps more. How many exist? Hesitated. Unknown. Based on intercepted communications, possibly tens of thousands across all human nations. Felt her confidence crumbling. She had conquered species with armies of millions. She had destroyed civilizations with fleets of thousands of ships. But she had never faced an enemy like this. On station, now empty and silent, Commander Sora finally emerged from her hiding place. She stood in the main control room, looking out at the departing fleet. "Phase 1 complete," she said into her radio. "The enemy is running scared, ready for Phase 2 on your command." Far away, in the headquarters of the United Nations Special Operations Command, a general named Lee smiled. "Outstanding work, Ghost," she said. "Now let us show them what happens when we stop playing nice." The real war was about to begin. Prime was one of humanity's most beautiful colonies. It was a paradise world with green forests, blue oceans, and mountains that touched the clouds. 17 million people called it home. They had built cities in harmony with nature, farms that fed dozens of other colonies, and a culture that celebrated peace and art. Admiral chose it as her next target because she needed a victory. After the disaster at Station, her reputation was damaged. Other commanders whispered that she had lost her nerve. She needed to prove them wrong. She brought 100,000 warriors, supported by tanks, aircraft, and orbital bombardment capabilities. It was the largest invasion force they had ever assembled for a single world. The humans defending Prime numbered only 8,000 regular soldiers, but among them were 300 special operations personnel from a dozen different nations, and leading them was Master Sergeant Han. Was 51 years old. She had served in the UDT and SEAL teams for 23 years, operating on 14 different worlds. Her was Widow, and she had earned it because everyone who fought against her ended up dead. She was not tall or particularly strong. She had gray in her hair and lines on her face from years of hard living, but her eyes were sharp as knives, and her mind was even sharper. When the fleet appeared in orbit, gathered her team in an underground bunker deep in the mountains. "The enemy has numbers," she said calmly. "They have technology, they have orbital support, but they do not have what we have." "What is that, Sergeant?" asked one of the younger operators. Smiled. "They do not have experience fighting humans, real humans, not prisoners or civilians, us." They landed expecting conventional warfare. They expected defensive lines, fortified positions, and battles they could win through superior numbers. Instead, they found nothing. The human forces had melted into the wilderness. The cities were empty. The farms were abandoned. It was as if the entire population had simply disappeared. Commander leading the ground forces was confused. "Where are they? Our sensors show no large concentrations of enemy troops." His scouts reported strange findings, trails that led nowhere, signs of recent activity that vanished into thin air, equipment that had been abandoned so recently the engines were still warm. "They are hiding," concluded. "Afraid to face us directly, begin systematic searches, flush them out." The searches began, and the dying began with them. The first patrol to enter the northern forests never came back. Search teams found them 3 days later, arranged in a circle around their own flag, which had been planted in the center of their camp. A message was carved into a nearby tree: "Welcome to Prime. Enjoy your stay." Lieutenant was the Human Forces Combat Controller. He was 29 years old, a genius with communications and coordination. From his position in a hidden bunker, he tracked every movement. "Enemy patrol moving through Sector 7, he reported through his encrypted radio. 12 warriors, 2 light vehicles, moving toward Firebase Alpha." Master Sergeant Han received the report from her position 3 miles away. Understood. Team 3, intercept and eliminate. No survivors. Team 3 was a 6-person squad led by Sergeant, a woman who had grown up hunting in the mountains of Old Korea. She knew forests better than she knew cities. And her team moved like shadows through the trees. They never saw them coming. The ambush lasted 40 seconds. Silent weapons, perfect coordination, absolute efficiency. When it was over, 12 warriors were dead and 2 vehicles were burning. His team was gone before the smoke cleared. This pattern repeated across the entire planet. Every patrol that left the main bases became a target. Supply convoys were destroyed. Communication towers were sabotaged. Officers were shot from distances that seemed impossible. Commander lost 6 generals in the first month. Not in battle, not in their ships, in their beds, in their showers, in the middle of supposedly secure meetings. Master Sergeant, the sniper called Death Eye, had followed the fleet from station. She set up positions that overlooked command centers and waited with infinite patience. 1 shot, 1 kill, then she disappeared. They began to call her a demon. Some warriors refused to go outside during daylight. Others started wearing extra armor, even inside their bases. It did not help. Adapted. She found new angles, new techniques, new ways to reach her targets. The generals kept dying. Led her personal team on a mission that lasted 47 days behind enemy lines. 12 operators, living off the land, striking at targets of opportunity. They destroyed ammunition dumps. They poisoned water supplies. They freed prisoners and armed them with captured weapons. They turned Prime into a nightmare for the occupiers. On the 23rd day, his team found a prison camp where civilians were being held. 3,000 humans, mostly women and children, waiting to be shipped off-world as slaves. Looked at the camp through her binoculars. 20 guards, 2 watchtowers, a fence that was more for show than security. "We do not have orders for this," said Sergeant Park, her second in command. "Command wants us to focus on military targets." Lowered her binoculars. "Those are our people in there. That makes it a military target." The attack came at midnight. 12 operators against 20 guards. It was not even a fair fight. Killed 5 guards herself, moving through the camp like a ghost. By the time the alarm sounded, half the guards were already dead. The rest surrendered or ran. 3,000 civilians walked free that night. Led them through the mountains to hidden shelters where they would be safe until the war ended. One little girl, maybe 6 years old, held his hand during the march. "Are you an angel?" she asked. Smiled sadly. "No, little one, I am just a soldier." "You saved us," the girl said. "That makes you an angel." Did not know what to say, so she just kept walking. On the 63rd day of the siege, Commander reached his breaking point. "Enough," he screamed at Admiral through the communication link. "We have lost 20,000 warriors, 20,000, and we have not captured a single significant objective. This planet is death." Was silent for a long moment. She was reviewing the casualty reports, the supply losses, the complete failure of every offensive operation. "Then we destroy it," she said finally. "Orbital bombardment, burn everything." Hesitated. "Admiral, there are 17 million humans on this planet. Orbital bombardment would kill them all." "I know. That violates 17 articles of the Galactic Convention. The other species will condemn us." "I do not care." His voice was cold and hard. "These humans are not soldiers. They are monsters. We cannot defeat them on the ground, so we will destroy the ground itself." The fleet began positioning for the bombardment. Giant weapons powered up, targeting the planet's major population centers. Lieutenant detected the preparations from his hidden bunker. He immediately sent word to command. The response came quickly. "This is Captain of the 1st Special Warfare Flotilla. Hold your positions. Help is coming." stared at his screen in confusion. He had not known there was a human fleet anywhere near Prime. There was not, at least not one that showed on any sensors. The first Special Warfare Flotilla was humanity's most secret weapon. 17 stealth frigates, designed to be invisible to all known detection methods. They had been following the fleet since station, waiting for the right moment. That moment had arrived. The frigates directly behind the formation, 17 ships against 12 battle cruisers. Impossible odds. Captain was 44 years old, a naval officer who had spent her entire career in special operations. She was not afraid of impossible odds. She had beaten them before. "Admiral," she broadcast on all frequencies, "if a single weapon fires on that planet, your entire fleet dies. You have 10 seconds to power down." Stared at her tactical display in shock. The human ships had appeared from nowhere, positioned perfectly to strike at the most vulnerable parts of her fleet. "Impossible," she whispered. "How did they get so close?" 7 seconds, Admiral. Looked at her options. Her ships were powerful, but they were not designed for close combat. At this range, the human frigates could do tremendous damage before being destroyed. 5 seconds. She could call the humans' bluff, fire anyway, maybe she would win. But the memory of station was still fresh. The ghosts, the deaths, the endless, impossible skill of these human special forces. "Power down all weapons," ordered. "Stand down." The fleet went silent. On the surface of Prime, 8,000 defenders and 300 special operators watched the orbital display with relief and pride. Master Sergeant Han stood on a mountain overlooking one of the bases. She watched as the enemy forces began to withdraw, loading back onto their transports. "We won," said Sergeant Park beside her. Shook her head. "We won this battle. The war is not over. They will come back, probably with everything they have." She was right. In the days that followed, Admiral made the most important decision of her life. She gathered every ship, every warrior, every weapon the Dominion possessed. She was going to attack Earth itself. It was time to end this war once and for all. Part 4, The Breaking Point. The war had lasted 2 years. 2 years of blood, death, and horror. 2 years of battles on a dozen worlds. 2 years of watching friends die and enemies multiply. The Dominion had never known defeat before they met humanity. Now they knew nothing else. Every invasion had failed. Every conquest had been reversed. Every victory had turned to ash in their hands. Admiral sat alone in her quarters, staring at a map of human space. She had lost half her fleet and a quarter of her warriors. Her officers were losing faith. Her soldiers were afraid. But she was not ready to give up, not yet. She called a meeting of every remaining commander. They came from across the galaxy, gathering on her flagship to hear her plan. "We have been fighting this war wrong," she told them. "We attacked colonies and outposts, thinking we could weaken humanity from the edges. But humans are not like other species. They do not break when you take their territory. They fight harder." She pointed at the map, at a single blue dot in the center of human space. Earth, the human home world, 30 billion people, their government, their industry, their heart. She looked at her commanders with burning eyes. "We take Earth and humanity dies, not in years or decades, in weeks." The commanders were silent. They knew what she was asking. "We will need everything," one of them said finally. "Every ship, every warrior if we fail." "We will not fail," said. "I have studied these humans. They are dangerous, yes. They are fierce and unpredictable, but they are also few. Their special forces cannot be everywhere. If we strike with overwhelming force, we will crush them before they can respond." She stood up, towering over the assembled commanders. 300 warships, 2 million warriors, every weapon we possess. This is the largest fleet in history. We will sweep Earth clean and end this war forever. The commanders agreed. They had no choice. The war had to end one way or another. Humanity knew they were coming. General Lee received the intelligence report in her office beneath Seoul. She was 62 years old, a soldier who had served for 40 years. She had commanded armies and led campaigns on 5 worlds, but nothing had prepared her for this. 300 ships, she said quietly, 2 million warriors, and we have, what? Her aide checked the numbers. 60 ships in the defense fleet, 200,000 soldiers, and the special operations units. Nodded slowly. She had known this moment would come. She had planned for it, but planning and reality were very different things. She called a meeting of her own. Not generals and admirals, but commanders of every elite unit humanity possessed. They gathered in a bunker deep beneath Seoul. Men and women from dozens of nations, wearing different uniforms but sharing the same look in their eyes. They were the best of the best, the warriors who operated in the shadows. I will not lie to you, told them. We cannot win this battle through conventional means. Our fleet is outnumbered 5-1. Our soldiers are outnumbered 10-1. If we fight them directly, we will lose. She paused, letting the reality sink in. But we do not fight directly. That is not what we do. She activated a holographic display showing Admiral's flagship. It was enormous, almost 2 kilometers long, bristling with weapons. Admiral is the leader. She holds their alliance together through force of will. Without her, the coalition will fracture. Their allied species will lose their nerve. The invasion will collapse. She looked at the assembled operators. We are going to board her flagship during the battle. We are going to fight our way to the command deck, and we are going to capture or kill the admiral. The room was silent. Everyone understood what she was asking. This was not a mission, it was a sacrifice. The odds of survival are low, continued. I will not order anyone to go. This is volunteers only. Every hand in the room went up. Felt her throat tighten with emotion. She had expected nothing less, but it still moved her. 47 operators, she said. That is all we can fit on the stealth shuttle. I need the best close-quarters combatants from every nation. The selection process took 3 days. In the end, 47 operators were chosen from 12 different countries. They were the finest warriors humanity had ever produced. Leading them was Sergeant First Class. Was 34 years old. He had survived wounds that should have killed him 3 times. He had completed missions that other soldiers said were impossible. He was considered the finest close-quarters fighter in human history. He gathered his team in the training facility and looked at each of them carefully. These were his brothers and sisters now. They would live together, train together, and probably die together. We have 6 weeks, he said. 6 weeks to learn every corridor, every room, every hiding spot on that flagship. We will memorize the schematics until we can walk the ship blindfolded. We will drill the assault until it is automatic. He paused, his eyes hard. And then we will board that ship and show these aliens what human special forces can really do. The training was brutal. 18 hours a day of combat drills, tactical simulations, and physical conditioning. They studied physiology to learn their weaknesses. They practiced with captured weapons in case they lost their own. Lieutenant Park was second in command. She was 30 years old, a veteran of a dozen operations. She had a calm manner that hid a fierce determination. One night she found sitting alone in the barracks, cleaning his weapons. "Cannot sleep?" she asked. He shook his head, "Too much thinking." She sat down beside him. "Want to talk about it?" Was quiet for a long moment. "I am not afraid of dying," he said finally. "Every mission I have ever done, I knew I might not come back. That is part of the job." "Then what is bothering you?" He looked at her with haunted eyes. 17 million people on Prime, 30 billion on Earth. They are counting on us if we fail. He could not finish the sentence. Nodded slowly. She understood. The weight of responsibility was crushing. "Then we do not fail," she said simply. Looked at her. She was smiling, confident, unafraid. "How can you be so calm?" he asked. Shrugged. "Because I have seen what we can do. At Station. At Prime. Every time the enemy thought they had us beaten, we found a way. That is what special forces do. We find a way." She put her hand on his shoulder. "You are not alone in this. 47 of us are going on that ship. 47 of the best soldiers humanity has ever produced. If anyone can do this, we can." Felt something loosen in his chest. She was right, he was not alone. "Thank you," he said quietly. "Save it," replied with a grin. "Thank me after we win." The day of the battle arrived. The fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the solar system. 300 warships, stretching across thousands of kilometers of space. It was the largest military force ever assembled by any species in the galaxy. Admiral stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching Earth grow larger on the. It was a beautiful world, blue and green and white. In a few hours it would be burning. "All ships advance," she ordered. "Destroy anything that opposes us." The human defense fleet met them at the orbit of Mars. 60 ships against 300. It was not a battle, it was a massacre. But the human ships did not run. They fought with everything they had, buying time, creating chaos. And in that chaos, a single stealth shuttle slipped through the lines. Sat in the shuttle's cargo bay, surrounded by his team. They were silent, each operator focused on the mission ahead. Some were praying. Others were reviewing their equipment one last time. The shuttle pilot's voice came through the speakers. 5 minutes to contact. Get ready." Stood up and faced his team. "This is it," he said. "Everything we have trained for, everything we have sacrificed for. It all comes down to the next few hours." He looked at each of them in turn. Sergeant O, the demolitions expert, Corporal, the medic, 43 other faces, 43 other warriors. "Some of us will not make it back," he continued. "We all know that, but what we do here today will be remembered forever. I will tell stories about this mission. Our names will live in history." He raised his rifle. "For Earth, for humanity, for everyone counting on us." "For Earth," the team echoed. The shuttle attached to the flagship's hull with a soft clang. The operators activated their cutting tools and began burning through. They did not know they were coming, not yet. But they would soon. The cutting torch burned through the hull in 37 seconds, was the first one through the hole, his rifle up and ready. Behind him came, then the rest of the team, flowing into the enemy ship like water through a crack. The corridor was empty. They had not detected the breach yet. "Move," whispered, "fast and quiet." They moved like ghosts through the alien ship. Every step was practiced. Every corner was cleared with precision. They had memorized these corridors during 6 weeks of training. Now they walked through them for real. The first contact came on Deck 14. A patrol of 8 warriors rounded the corner directly in front of the team. For a split second, both groups froze in surprise. The humans recovered first. Corporal dropped the first warrior with a silent shot to the throat. Sergeant O threw a knife that buried itself in the second warrior's eye. The rest of the team opened fire, their silenced weapons coughing death. 8 warriors fell in 3 seconds. Not one of them had time to raise an alarm. "Keep moving," ordered. They advanced through the ship, leaving a trail of bodies behind them. Every patrol they met, every guard they encountered, died before they could react. They had no idea death was walking through their halls. On the bridge, Admiral watched the space battle with satisfaction. Her fleet was destroying the human defenders. In a few more hours, Earth would be defenseless. Her communications officer spoke up. "Admiral, we have lost contact with patrols on decks 14 through 22. Frowned, equipment malfunction. Unknown. I am sending security teams to investigate." nodded and returned her attention to the battle. Lost patrols were a minor concern. She had 2 million warriors. A few missing squads meant nothing. She was wrong. And his team reached Deck 17, the outer ring of the command section. Here the corridors were wider, the defenses stronger. Elite guards patrolled in groups of 12, armed with the best weapons they possessed. The first major firefight began. Shot the lead guard between the eyes before he could raise his weapon. The rest of the guards opened fire, filling the corridor with purple energy bolts. Cover shouted. The team scattered, taking positions behind support columns and in doorways. They returned fire with deadly accuracy. Private First Class O saw the grenade rolling toward a cluster of his teammates. He did not think. He did not hesitate. He threw himself on top of it. The explosion killed him instantly. The others survived. "Move up," screamed, channeling his grief into fury. "Push through them." The team charged forward, stepping over his body. They would mourn later. Right now, they had a mission. The guards fell one by one. The humans lost 2 more soldiers in the fight, but they did not stop. They could not stop. Admiral received the first alert as they breached Deck 23. "Intruders in the command section," her security chief reported. "Humans. They have killed over 100 guards and are advancing toward the bridge." His eyes widened. How many intruders? The security chief checked his data. Current estimates say fewer than 50. 50 humans against her entire flagship, and they were winning. "All elite guards to the bridge," ordered. "Seal all access points. Nothing gets through." She stood up from her command chair, drawing her personal weapon. She was not going to run. Not again. Not this time. And his team reached the bridge's outer defenses. The blast doors were sealed, 2 feet of solid metal between them and their target. They had lost 7 soldiers getting this far. 40 remained. Sergeant O moved forward with his demolition kit. "I can blow these doors in 4 minutes. "You have to," replied. The charges were set in 90 seconds. The team took cover around corners and in adjoining rooms. The explosion shook the deck. The doors bent, buckled, and finally fell. And 40 of the finest warriors that had ever produced stood ready on the other side. They were Admiral's personal guard. Each one stood 9 feet tall, covered in ceremonial armor that was also fully functional. Each one had killed hundreds of enemies. They were the elite of the elite. Looked at them, looked at his own team. 40 humans, many wounded, all exhausted. And he smiled. Admiral stepped forward, her weapon aimed its head. "Surrender," she said. "You are 40 against 40. You are tired and wounded. My warriors are fresh and armored. You cannot win." Removed his helmet so she could see his face. He wanted her to see his eyes. "Admiral," he said calmly, "you still do not understand. We are not 40 soldiers. We are 40 special operators. That is a very different thing." He raised his rifle. "We are not here to fight your guards. We are here to go through them." The battle lasted 4 minutes and 37 seconds. The elite guards were massive, strong, and well-trained, but they had never faced anything like this. The humans moved like a single organism, each one covering the others, each one exploiting every weakness. Fought with 2 knives after her rifle jammed. She took down 6 guards herself, dancing between their blows like water flowing around rocks. Used his last explosive to take out a cluster of guards, catching himself in the blast but saving 3 teammates. Corporal, the medic, killed 12 warriors with a pistol she had taken from a dead, shooting with perfect accuracy while dragging a wounded teammate to safety. And was everywhere. He moved through the enemy like a force of nature, his blade finding gaps in armor that should not have existed. He killed and killed and killed, his face empty of everything except focus. When it was over, 40 elite guards lay dead on the deck. 23 humans still stood. Admiral knelt in a pool of her own purple blood, 3 blades at her throat. Her weapon had been torn from her hands. Her guards were dead. Her flagship was falling silent as human boarding parties secured deck after deck. Stood before her, his armor cracked and stained with blood, both hers and his. "Your invasion is over," he said simply. "Your alliance is broken, and every species in this galaxy will know what happens when you threaten humanity." Looked up at him. She had lived for 200 years. She had conquered worlds. She had broken civilizations. She had never known fear. Now she knew it intimately. "What are you?" she whispered. Considered the question. He thought about his teammates, the ones who had died getting him here, all the others. He thought about the soldiers who had fought at Nu, at Station, at Prime. "We are the reason humanity has never been conquered," he said finally. "We are the ones who go where regular soldiers cannot go. We do what they cannot do. We pay prices they cannot pay." He sheathed his blade and looked down at the broken admiral. "And we never, ever stop." The Dominion signed the Treaty of Seoul 17 days later. They surrendered all claimed human territory. They paid reparations for their crimes. They agreed to permanent demilitarization. Admiral was tried for war crimes and sentenced to life in prison. She never spoke during her trial. She just stared at the human judges with hollow eyes, unable to understand how everything had gone so wrong. The other species of the galaxy watched humanity with a new emotion. It was not quite fear. It was not quite respect. It was something in between. In the years that followed, no species dared threaten human space, because they had learned the lesson that Admiral learned too late. Regular human soldiers were terrifying. They fought with courage and determination that other species could not match. But human special forces were something else entirely. They were the distilled essence of human warfare. Centuries of training and selection compressed into individual warriors who could reshape entire battles through skill and will alone. Sergeant First Class returned to Earth a hero. He was offered promotions, medals, political positions. He refused them all. Instead, he went back to the training facility. He had a new class of recruits to prepare, new warriors to shape, new special operators to create. Because he knew what the galaxy now understood. The war was over, but the universe was vast and full of dangers. And humanity needed its guardians. In a quiet ceremony, the names of the 24 operators who died on Admiral's flagship were added to a memorial wall. They would never be forgotten. Lieutenant Park stood before the wall, reading each name slowly. "Was it worth it?" someone asked her. She turned and saw a young recruit, barely 20 years old, looking at her with curious eyes. Thought about the question. She thought about throwing himself on that grenade. She thought about smiling as he armed his last explosive. She thought about all the others who had given everything. 30 billion people on Earth, she said softly. 17 million on Prime, millions more on every colony world. She looked at the names on the wall. 24 lives to save billions. Yes, it was worth it. They knew the price and they paid it willingly. She put her hand on the cold stone. That is what it means to be special forces. Not the training, not the skills, not the weapons. It is the willingness to sacrifice everything so others do not have to. The young recruit nodded slowly, understanding something important. And somewhere in the depths of space, on a world that had never heard of Earth, alien generals reviewed the reports from the war. They saw what human regular soldiers had done. They saw what human special forces had done. And they decided, wisely, to never find out what might come next. Because if regular humans were dangerous and special forces were devastating, what else might humanity create? Some questions, they concluded, were better left unanswered. The universe had learned to fear humanity. And humanity was just getting started.